To you, Dr. Juma. To achieve gender role, as Kenyans will elect one man, one woman from each of the 47 counties to Parliament. Members of the county assemblies are to manage fund that will replace the MP's National Government Constituency Development Fund, that is CDF. Life sentence for one convicted of corruption, no presidential pardon. Such cases to be tried in 30 days and appeals concluded in 15 days. Constitutional commissions to comprise not more than 5 part-time members. And everyone aged between aged 18 with national identity card deemed as a registered voter. This will save Kenyans, or Kenya, 29 billion Kenya shillings spent on voter registration exercise. Franklin did mention that before we went on break. And the governor to nominate a deputy from the county executive officers, and by-election to be held if the governor dies or leaves office. It appears that he has crafted this very well in the essence that he does want to entice the county assemblies, which are now the bedrock of the devolved system of governance in the country. How will this fundamentally make him capitulate on the available political spaces and vacuum in the country? And in essence, has he watered down the BBI report?
Definitely, because the initial call for referendum was emanating from BBI, and it was a tempo they had set. But the questions that he's bringing on the table, are they holding water, or are they still things that were provided for constitutionally and the people refused with the impunity to implement? Mm-hmm. Because we've seen adamant defiance to follow constitution with impunity. We've seen, remember when we were going for, there was an appeal to challenge the 26th election, and all of a sudden judges were not there.
That was before the repeat poll.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Chief Justice was all by himself. Mm-hmm. Now, would that, whether you provide a law, would you force a judge to go and sit?
Of course not.
So all these elements, when I talk about constitutionalism, Ayub, Kenya has gone through a lot. Mm-hmm. Kenya has fought the colonial era. Kenya managed to fight the one single government party dictatorial regime. We all fought to bring in democracy. In 2010, we all fought to bring in what? Mm-hmm. Constitutional change. As we talk, I think it's only a fool who does the same thing, the same way, expecting a different result. Mm-hmm.
Are you, Doc? All right.
We ought to have been focusing not on the constitutional dispensation or another constitutional reform. As we build on this, we are way affected economically. We are far behind, even with our equals. They've been comparing with Singapore and all these other countries. Yeah. What are we to do right now? Because look at the students graduates who are graduating annually. Look at the economic environment. What actually is the need of a Kenyan? Right now, if you tell somebody about a constitution, how beneficial will it be to a Kenyan citizen if it won't bring the bread on table?
Okay.
So this is, to me, as BBI was a political outfit set to revamp certain political agenda for specific persons, Punguza Mzigo also is a counter-political outfit for certain political, which individuals who are also seeking political relevance for purposes of winning election. Yet, they're doing all this at the expense of the citizen. And this is why Justice and Freedom Party, we would sit back and call for the interest of the citizen first. Because all this ulabalu that we're taking the citizen through, the constitutional dispensation and the constitutional review, we ought to have exhausted these things in 2010. Fair enough, even if we were to talk about constitutionalism and constitution, you can't just have a perfect constitution.
Okay.
When we're talking about a constitution, Doc, and constitutionalism, we always acknowledge the fact that it is dynamic. It is not static. So that is one thing that we start off with. And just picking up from what you're trying to say, and maybe just to loop in, Andrew, Do you foresee, or do you see this as a bigger plan, as opposed to what the common mwananchi or the citizen is saying? Because anyone with political wisdom will tell you that sometimes, or better yet, just going back to what we have seen, the political tides that we witnessed today, is a clear indication that there's someone who set the state and they decided that we are going to go for a referendum, and a clear indication that fight their way out to ensure that this referendum is a success. And politically, we've seen how many people, like how many times people have been used, even when you do not expect, yet it's just a machinery of the state, or basically something is working on behalf of someone toward, or somebody is working on behalf of someone towards ensuring that their need, the ultimate goal is met, or their ultimate need is met in a way. So should Kenyans have an extra eye to see this, and just on that very D-Day, because then there are likelihoods that we're going to have a referendum, then they probably surprise this particular individual.
See, Lindy, what you're doing is you're questioning the goodwill of the people we see, the people we know, who we see on TV or we see on the news. But you're making a very valid point about, is there goodwill on the part of the political class to actually move forward for the benefit of 45 to 50 million people who live in Kenya? The thing about the 2010 Constitution is that I contributed to the Committee of Experts in November, December of 2009 on issues that were of concern to me. For example, the freehold title deeds, 65(1) of the Constitution, which revoked freehold title deeds held by non-citizens, leaving them in the possession of citizens. Non-citizens could not vote in the referendum, but citizens could. But I did not oppose the Constitution because of one clause or one paragraph that was detrimental to my personal interests, because the Constitution included a transitional clause that says anyone affected by that revocation would have a leasehold certificate notionally within 2 years of the Constitution being promulgated. 9 years later, they haven't been issued. The National Land Commission, one of the constitutional commissions, put out a call in 2013 to regularize this situation, and then failed to do so on the basis that not very many foreigners complied. The Constitution of 2010 has a lot of, I think, is overly prescriptive. It's not like the U.S. Constitution, with which I'm very familiar, which I studied at New York Law School with constitutional law classes. I also remember the Bowman situation, where I pro bono contributed as much as I could the first time I met Yashpal Gai. It's quite obvious. There are prohibitions in the 2010 Constitution that weren't in the Independence Constitution, because, for example, the military is prohibited from engaging in internal domestic security force operations unless the National Assembly meets and pre-authorizes their deployment. Now, that has never been done in accordance with the Constitution. This has nothing to do with chemical spills or natural disasters, where you would expect the military, with its engineering capacity, its transport capacity, its organization, to step in disaster management to basically back up the county authorities or civil authorities. No, we are looking at a situation where the Constitution specifically says no internal deployments of the military for domestic security force operations. And we've seen since Westgate, we've seen in Laikipia, we know when we see KDF troops on patrol in places like Lamu being ambushed by Al-Shabaab, that National Assembly has not authorized any of these operations. And they don't seem to have any interest in complying with the Constitution. By opening up all of we haven't seen the BBI task force recommendations, where everything's operating on rumor. Now, Linda, you did make a point. How does this impact on the economy? Well, I'll be quite frank. The failure to regularize the title deeds, to basically sort out a mess from the 999-year leases that have been reduced to 99-year leases, it creates increasing amounts of uncertainty. That means that foreign direct investment is not coming in. People do not invest in a country which is in a constant state of constitutional ferment. People cannot put their shareholders' money into a place where there's a demonstrable demonstrations almost on a daily basis of a lack of concern to comply with laws. Where the IEBC was ordered by the High Court in 2017 to open up, to resume continuous voter registration and diaspora voter registration as of the 6th of September 2017. The IEBC has failed to do anything like that or even mention it. But then again, the representatives, the global diaspora representatives that we see sometimes on TV, they're not talking about this either. So you could have 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 potential voters who could vote in the presidential elections. They're not being registered, but the High Court said, register them, and gave a date, the 6th of September 2017. When we talk about the repeat election, there was a failure to be able to have a quorum to determine whether that repeat election should go ahead on the 26th of October. How was that engineered or manufactured? Well, the Deputy Chief Justice's car was attacked the day before. Her driver was severely wounded in a gun attack. She was justifiably believed she had been targeted and was justifiably not traumatized to go to court. Yes. Another Supreme Court justice was attending his child's graduation from nursery school.
Could not find the flight back home.
And couldn't find the flight. Another Supreme Court justice was unfortunately very sick. Justice Abraham was down in South Africa. He was missing in action until well after the elections, receiving treatment. So a failure to be able to convene a quorum, not because for legal reasons, but because of extrajudicial reasoning. The dissenting justice from the September 1st election nullification didn't show up.
Exactly.
Didn't show up. Withheld her presence to reduce the possibility of a quorum. So we had a repeat election that was not held in 4 counties. It was not held in 4 counties. And let's be honest, Third Way Alliance participated in the repeat election, giving it legal credibility, legitimacy. Now, sitting here as somebody, a lawyer, former Marine Corps officer, an oxygen-breathing human being, this kind of uncertainty is not good for anyone.
Is there a case of double-standardness then? In the medium term here, because all about the crafting process and what is entailed in the proposal is all about one that will fancy with regards to the bread and butter and the issues that
absolutely. It's so well written that from a populist point of view, who is not going to want to approve reducing the costs of national government? From a constitutional point of view, if you believe that the 14 devolved functions, that the Constitution, that devolution is an important aspect of this country's future, who is going to oppose strengthening devolution?
Well,